My name is Clara, and I've been married to Daniel for 10 years. Our life is a polished picture of suburban perfection. A cozy house, 2 kids, and a dog named Max. Daniel is everything a woman could ask for. Steady, loving, reliable. But routine has a way of dulling the shine, doesn't it? It all began on a sun-drenched afternoon. I was watering the flowers in our front yard when I first saw him, Alex, the new neighbor. He was unloading boxes from a moving truck, his broad shoulders straining against the fabric of his t-shirt. I waved politely, and he waved back, flashing a smile that seemed to linger longer than it should have. The neighborhood was buzzing with gossip about the new guy, a writer, they said. Moved here for the peace and quiet. Single, handsome, too handsome, if I'm being honest. Something about the way his hazel eyes seemed to see right through you made my stomach flutter, a sensation I hadn't felt in years. The moment that changed everything happened a week later. I was in my bedroom folding laundry when I glanced out the window. Alex's bathroom window was directly opposite ours, and the curtain was partially open. He had just stepped out of the shower. I froze. His body was a study in strength and grace, droplets of water tracing lines down his skin. It was only a moment before he wrapped a towel around himself, but that single moment ignited something in me I thought had long since died. I turned away, my heart pounding. What was I doing? What kind of woman gawks at her neighbor like that? I'd seen my fair share of good-looking men before, but this was different. There was a magnetic pull, an ache I couldn't explain. I poured myself this bottle of wine from the case using my nice skin. Over the next few days, I tried to push the incident from my mind, but every time I saw Alex mowing his lawn, jogging past my house, or even just waving hello, I felt the heat rise in my cheeks. And worse, I caught myself looking for excuses to run into him. One evening, as I walked Max around the block, I found Alex sitting on his porch with a book in hand. "Clara, right?" he called out, his voice smooth and warm. I nodded, trying to appear casual. "That's me. Settling in okay?" "Yeah, the neighborhood's been great so far. People are friendly." He paused, his eyes locking on mine. "Especially you." I laughed nervously. "Well, we try to make everyone feel welcome." "You've certainly succeeded," he said, his smile teasing yet sincere. I felt a flush creep up my neck. "Enjoy your evening, Alex." As I walked away, I couldn't help but replay his words in my head. The way he said my name felt like an intimate caress. I told myself I was imagining things, that I was reading too much into a simple conversation, but deep down, I knew better. By the time I got home, Daniel was sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone. "How was the walk?" he asked without looking up. I just crawled in my cabin and moaned about it. "Good," I replied, my voice tight. He didn't notice the tension. Didn't notice me at all, really. That night, as I lay in bed beside him, my thoughts wandered to Alex, to the way his smile made me feel alive, to the thrilling, terrifying possibility that maybe, just maybe, I was standing on the edge of something I couldn't control. And that was the moment I realized I was already falling. It started innocently enough, or at least that's what I told myself. A wave here, a smile there, casual conversations during chance encounters. But each interaction with Alex was like adding kindling to a fire I couldn't bring myself to extinguish. One afternoon, I was tending to my garden when Alex called out from across the yard. "Clara, you've got quite the green thumb. Think you could give me a few tips?" I glanced up, shielding my eyes from the sun. "I'd be happy to. What are you trying to grow?" Cesare said. "Desmobanonsis." "Honestly, I'm hopeless with plants," he admitted, walking closer. "But I'd love to learn." Maybe you could come over sometime and show me the ropes. His tone was light, but the suggestion hung in the air between us, charged with unspoken meaning. My heart raced as I searched for an appropriate response. Sure, I could do that, I said, trying to sound casual. Great, he said, flashing that disarming smile. How about tomorrow afternoon? And just like that, I had agreed. The next day, I found myself standing at his front door, a pot of basil in hand. Alex greeted me with a warmth that felt almost too welcoming. His home was minimalistic but inviting, a stark contrast to the chaos of my own house. Thanks for coming over, he said, leading me to the backyard. I figured we'd start with something simple. Basil, right? Right, I replied, setting the pot down. It's a good beginner plant. As I demonstrated how to plant and care for it, Alex stood close. Too close. I could feel the heat of his body, smell the faint scent of his cologne. Every time our hands brushed, an electric current shot through me. You're a natural teacher, he said softly, his eyes locking onto mine. And you're a good student, I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. The air between us grew heavy. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then, as if drawn by an invisible force, Alex reached out and tucked a stray strand of hair behind my ear. His touch lingered, sending a shiver down my spine. Clara, he said, his voice low and filled with something I couldn't name. I don't want to make you uncomfortable, but you're not, I interrupted, surprising myself with the honesty in my voice. Before I could think better of it, I stepped back. I should go, I said quickly, gathering my things. Thanks. Clara, he called after me, but I didn't stop. I practically ran back to my house, my heart pounding. What was I doing? I was playing with fire, and I knew it. Oh. That night, I couldn't sleep. Alex's touch, his words, the way he looked at me, it all played over and over in my mind. I told myself I wouldn't go back, that I couldn't let this go any further. But deep down, I knew the truth. I didn't want to stop. The web of desire was spinning tighter, and I was caught in its grasp. Days turned into weeks, and my interactions with Alex became a secret I carried like a stone in my chest. Each glance, each lingering word between us was a step closer to the edge of something I couldn't name. And then, one warm summer evening, the line I swore I'd never cross blurred into nothingness. It started with a simple text message. Alex had somehow gotten my number. He claimed a neighbor had passed it along in case of emergencies. The first text was innocent enough. Thanks again for the basil lesson. The plant is thriving. I smiled despite myself. I should have ignored it, deleted it, forgotten it ever happened, but I didn't. Glad to hear it, I replied. From there, the messages became a regular thing. Casual questions about gardening turned into jokes, then into late-night conversations about life, dreams, and regrets. He was funny, insightful, and attentive in a way I hadn't felt from Daniel in years. One evening, after the kids were asleep and Daniel was glued to his laptop, Alex sent me a message that made my breath catch. Come over, just for a little while, I have something to show you. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. I should have said no. I should have blocked his number and gone to bed. But instead, I found myself slipping on a light cardigan and stepping out into the night. Alex's house was dimly lit when I arrived. He opened the door almost immediately, as if he'd been waiting for me. Come in, he said, his voice low and inviting. Inside, he led me to the living room, where a bottle of wine and 2 glasses sat on the coffee table. I thought we could toast to your gardening expertise, he said with a playful smile. I hesitated but eventually sat down. The wine was rich and smooth, and the conversation flowed as easily as the drink. We talked about everything and nothing, the tension between us building with every passing moment. At some point, the laughter faded, replaced by a charged silence. Alex moved closer, his eyes searching mine. Clara, he said softly, I've been trying to fight this, but I can't stop thinking about you. My breath hissed. Alex, we can't. But before I could finish, his lips were on mine. The kiss was gentle at first, testing, but quickly deepened as months of unspoken desire spilled over. My mind screamed at me to stop, but my body betrayed me, responding with a hunger I hadn't felt in years. We pulled apart, both breathing heavily. I should go, I whispered, though my body ached to stay. Stay, he murmured, his hand brushing my cheek. Just for a little while. And in that moment, I made a choice that changed everything. The guilt was immediate and all-consuming, but so was the thrill. For the first time in years, I felt alive, seen, wanted. As I slipped back into my house later that night, the weight of what I'd done settled over me like a storm cloud. Danny was asleep, oblivious to the turmoil raging inside me. I stood in the doorway, watching him, wondering how I could have strayed so far from the woman I used to be. But even as the guilt threatened to crush me, a small, selfish part of me whispered that it wasn't over. Not yet. The days that followed were a blur of guilt and longing. I avoided Alex, but every time I saw him in passing, my heart raced. The secret we shared was both a heavy burden and a dangerous thrill. I couldn't escape the shadow of what I'd done or the memory of how it made me feel. Daniel noticed the change in me. You've been distant lately, he said one evening as we sat on the couch. His eyes searched mine, filled with a concern that twisted the knife in my chest. I'm just tired, I lied, forcing a smile. The kids have been a handful. He nodded, accepting my excuse without question. But his kindness only deepened my guilt. How could I betray a man who had done nothing but love me? One afternoon, as I was folding laundry, my phone buzzed with a text. It was Alex. Can we talk? I miss you. I stared at the message, my heart pounding. I knew I should ignore it, delete it, block his number. But instead, my fingers moved, almost of their own accord. Nah, it's too risky. His reply came almost immediately. I'll wait. Whenever you're ready. I put the phone down, my hands trembling. I knew I was playing with fire, but a part of me didn't care. A part of me craved the intensity, the escape from the monotony of my life. Days turned into weeks, and I managed to avoid Alex completely. But the distance did nothing to quell the storm inside me. The memories of our night together haunted me, pulling me back into a web I couldn't untangle. Then, one evening, everything came crashing down. Daniel came home early from work, his face pale and drawn. We need to talk, he said, his voice tight. I froze, panic clawing at my throat. What's wrong? He held up his phone and my blood ran cold. On the screen was a series of messages between Alex and me. Care to explain this? He asked, his voice trembling with anger and hurt. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. The weight of my betrayal hung heavy in the air, suffocating us both. How long? He demanded, his voice breaking. How long has this been going on? Daniel, I trailed off, tears streaming down my face. It was a mistake. I didn't mean for it to happen. But it did, he said, his voice cold. You lied to me, Clara. You betrayed me. I'm sorry, I whispered, the words feeling hollow and inadequate. I never wanted to hurt you. But you did, he said, his eyes filled with pain. And I don't know if I can forgive you. The days that followed were a living nightmare. Daniel moved into the guest room and the tension in the house was unbearable. The kids sensed something was wrong, but I couldn't bring myself to explain. How could I tell them that their mother had destroyed their family? Alex tried to reach out, but I ignored his calls and messages. I couldn't face him, couldn't face the wreckage we had caused. The thrill of our affair had turned to ashes, leaving nothing but regret and heartache in its wake. As I sat alone in the quiet of my house, I realized the depth of the damage I had done. I had shattered the trust of the man who loved me, hurt my children, and lost myself in the process. The road to redemption would be long and painful, but I knew I had to take it for Daniel, for my kids, and for myself. The forbidden pleasures that had once seemed so enticing had left me with nothing but a broken heart and a desperate hope for forgiveness.